Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Esoteric and a continuing series on the Steam Deck. Most importantly, how to get some emulators set up, which emulators you should be playing, and the best games to play on all of those diverse emulators. Because there's such a gigantic history of retro gaming out there for you to enjoy, and Steam Deck basically allows you to have fun with all of it. And today what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the Nintendo DS emulation situation, more importantly what games you should check out, both things that might be slightly obvious and other things that are deep cuts. Before we get too far involved, though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, Aliens Infestation is basically a Metroidvania that takes place in the Alien franchise world. And this game is absolutely amazing from start to finish, and it's a game that I never really hear anybody mention whatsoever. Because we have so many incredible Castlevania games on the Nintendo DS, this seems to be almost completely forgotten about. I never hear anyone talking about it, and that is such an absolute disappointment because this game is every bit as good as what Konami did with the Castlevania franchise on the DS, except it is more like a survival horror Metroidvania than the Castlevania games, but it has all of the same Metroidvania hook, unlocking different areas of the map, getting different power-ups to see new features in the game, and just an overall giant map that you get to explore, all while getting some really good story and being able to live in the world of Alien. It is just one of those games that if you love this franchise, if you love this genre and you've never played the game before, you definitely should be checking it out because it is every bit as good as I promise you it can be. The best part is too, the graphics, the music, the sound, everything in this game is top notch. You can tell the development team spent a lot of time, energy, and probably money getting this game to where it is, and I love all of the different keycard access as well. Unlike something like Castlevania where you're getting different abilities, here you're searching out these keycards to access different areas of the ship, and every time you get a new keycard, an entire chunk of the map opens up. But there's so much backtracking and exploration in a good way in this game. You just start to play, you see something interesting, and you wonder how to get there, and it's all of that that makes you keep going forward. But of course, what is a Metroidvania game without combat? There's such good combat in this game between the guns, the grenades, and all the different ways you can destroy your enemies. It is basically the action Metroidvania without actually being a Metroid game. But if you've never played this before, if you're new to Metroidvanias, you're looking for something to play on your Steam Deck, this is absolutely 10 out of 10 good. I can't recommend it enough. Now onto a completely different genre and another game that recently got remade for the Nintendo Switch. It's Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. I think this might be the absolute best game on the entire Nintendo DS, but leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite one is. This is basically a point-and-click adventure game done in the style of Capcom, and it just works from start to finish. The best part about this game is the story is absolutely intriguing and engrossing. You want to find out what happens next, and it just drives the entire experience forward. But they marry that with some of the best point-and-click puzzles in any game I've ever played. This is later than your standard 90s point-and-click adventure game, so it actually does use standard logic. The solutions to puzzles aren't going to be so obtuse you wonder how they even thought of it. But the other good part about this game is all the rotoscoped animations, all this sprite work. This game oozes charm. It's got such a unique vibe, and when this came out on the DS, I remember seeing it on store shelves and buying it to try it out, and I absolutely fell in love, but only until the Switch remake recently happened that I ever even really hear mention of this game. So few people played it, it definitely didn't seem to be a hit for Capcom, but I think it really is one of the best things Capcom has ever made for either a handheld or a console. And it also has one of the best soundtracks Capcom's ever done as well, so go ahead and listen for 35 seconds to come right back because I got a lot more Nintendo DS games to show you. Awesome music, and the soundtrack just keeps getting better as this game goes on, and that's the thing about Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. You keep wanting to play the game. You want to see one more level, one more scene, one more detail in the story. It really is an incredible tale that they're telling here in the game, and they put that together with some of the most intelligent puzzle solving in any adventure game I've ever played. Again, this game's a 10 out of 10 hidden gem in my opinion. Definitely check it out. But of course we can't talk about Metroidvania without talking about Castlevania, and there's so many awesome options on the DS. I'm showing you Portrait of Ruin, but honestly any of the games would be awesome choices for you to start with. I will say Order of Ecclesia is not my favorite game. I think that's the weakest of the three, but honestly Portrait of Ruin, if you're going to start someplace, this is an absolutely great place to start, and it works so well on the Steam Deck as well. You really don't need the second screen for much of anything, so you can really get that full fat screen experience on your Steam Deck or however way you want to play this game, and it is just another incredible game in the Castlevania franchise. I love Metroidvania more than any other genre within Castlevania, and the Nintendo DS just gave us so many incredible games to play in this franchise. It's all of what you love from Symphony of the Night, except in a different sort of storytelling format with new characters, new levels, and new enemies, but it still has that same classic Castlevania flair, so you know you're going to get awesome combat, an awesome huge castle to explore, some twists and turns, and an absolutely spectacular soundtrack like only Konami could do when they were dealing with Castlevania games. And this game runs perfectly on the Steam Deck as well. Upscale the internal resolution, it looks incredible on the Steam Deck screen. You really can't go wrong. All of the controls transpose over perfectly as well. It's just one of those things. This game is perfect. All of the games on the Nintendo DS as far as Castlevania are concerned would definitely qualify to near perfection, but Portrait of Ruin just does everything incredibly well, and the buddy mechanic, this team system having a second player, does add a fun new layer to the game. So if you haven't played this game before, but you played a couple other Metroidvanias, this is definitely one you should check out because it does everything similar but also different at the same time. It adds on top of what everyone knew was the Metroidvania formula, but gave us even more to love about it. But it is one of those things. If you've never owned a DS, if you've never played this game before somehow, and you're now emulating DS on your Steam Deck, 1000% check it out. It really is just that good. But of course we also have Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, the other game in the trilogy. Like I said, I didn't put Order of Ecclesia in this one because I don't love the level structure as much. You can leave me a comment down below and tell me if that was a stupid thing to do. But honestly, if you're going to play any of these, I would leave Order of Ecclesia to last if you've never played any of them. But it's Castlevania, it's got a banging soundtrack. Go ahead and listen for 30 seconds and I'll be back because I got a lot more games to show you on the DS. Spectacular soundtrack, and honestly Konami, when they were making music for Castlevania, made some of the best video game music in history in my opinion. But again, this is just another incredible experience to have in your Steam Deck. What I love so much about playing these games on deck is you get the much larger, better screen than a Nintendo DS, but you still have the trackpads that allow you to draw on this screen. It's really the best of both worlds. You don't need to use the trackpad much whatsoever, but when you do need it, it's precise and responsive, and when you don't, you get such a better experience than playing on an original DS as far as the screen size and overall quality is concerned, because obviously the Steam Deck has a much more recent screen technology-wise. But this is just another awesome adventure to have, whether you're playing docked or on the go. It is a very long game, and that's the best part about something like a Steam Deck. Take it with you, play on your way to work, play during lunch, and then you can go home and dock it again. You will see here, you can make those shapes on the screen with the trackpad. You need to be a little bit quick, but it does work, and that's the best part about this hardware. It allows you to feel like you're really playing a Nintendo DS, but it feels like it's an even better version. And again, Dawn of Sorrow is just that classic Metroidvania flair. These games are also incredible. I own all of them on original carts, so they'll never leave my collection, but replaying them on the Steam Deck has been a ton of fun because it's just a new, better way to play. And again, if I'm recommending you games to check out on your Steam Deck when you're playing Nintendo DS, I would be really negligent if I didn't tell you about all of the Castlevania games. They're all awesome, they're all amazing, and even if you haven't played them before, or even if you played them recently, it's time to check them out again. Now moving on to a game that I love and I feel like either people are going to love or hate is Chibi Robo on the Nintendo DS. This is an awesome game. It's basically the companion game to the GameCube version, but it's one of those things. Chibi Robo is either loved or hated by people because it's such a strange Nintendo game, and weirdly enough when it opens up it's basically like a post-apocalyptic robot world, almost like Skynet and Terminator took over, but it's in a bright, cheery Nintendo game. but this is just a unique game that 100% works with the touchscreen aspect of the DS, and that translates really well over to the Steam Deck. And I feel like 9 out of every 10 people that are watching this video are not going to have played Chibi Robo on the DS. It has such a charming look to it as well, with all of the unfiltered textures on screen, all those big chunky polygons. This was the DS using 3D to the best of its ability, but it was never a 3D powerhouse. But the good thing about that is it's so weird and stylized and unique that it doesn't really need to have the best graphics, because the vibes it puts on screen really make up for the lack of polygons and those huge pixels in the textures. Basically, all you do in this game is help the family clean up and do other adventures around the house, but it is so weird, it is so charming, it is so unique, it's got a strange sense of humor. You get engrossed in this game and you really want to see what happens next with the family and what Chibi Robo and his friends get up to. But it does make really good use of the touchscreen as well. You can see the mouse cursor moving around, that little pixel on screen, and that's how you're basically going to navigate in the world of Chibi Robo. But you get that big giant screen up on your Steam Deck, and then you're able to play the game just with the trackpad under your thumb, and it actually feels like a better way to enjoy the game than on a real DS hardware, because you can keep both hands on the Steam Deck and just use the mouse pad to move around in the world. This is basically an action puzzle platformer, light on the platforming, heavy on the puzzle, but it just works. And all of the stages are bite-sized and concise because obviously it was developed first for the Nintendo DS. This is a great game to take with you and play on the go. It gives you those bite-sized chunks of fun, but then like 15 minutes later you've completed a task, you completed a level, you can just pop your Steam Deck away and go from there. But this family is just so hilarious. That dog with all of those chunky pixels on top of him, it is a total look, feel, and vibe, and it works. This is basically Nintendo experimenting the same way they experimented with something like Pikmin when they made the first game. But you'll see here we've plugged our vacuum in and Chibi can start picking up and vacuuming items in the world. You need to clean up in-game to make everybody happy because that's your job, you're a cleaning robot. But with the touch controls on the thumbsticks, on the trackpads, it just 100% is a perfect experience to have on the DS. And that's what I love about Nintendo so much. When they want to experiment, they want to be weird, they want to make a game that's unlike anything else, they can absolutely hit a home run. But for one reason or another, Chibi Robo just did not seem to succeed back in the day. But you can 100% play it on your Steam Deck today, and I can't recommend it enough. But don't forget the DS could do 3D, and Moon here is one of the better first-person shooters on the hardware. It's definitely harder to play a first-person shooter on DS than it is any other sort of platform, but once you get the hang of it, it definitely works, and seeing this world in full 3D, it kind of feels like Metroid Prime, except not actually being a Metroid game. And it's definitely another one that doesn't get as much credit as it deserves. It's got great in-engine cutscenes, it's got a lot of fun to be had, and it's got a really good story with a lot of fun level architecture and better graphical details than you would expect for the Nintendo DS. So if you've never played this game before, I can't recommend you check it out enough. It does take a minute to get used to the controls, so be aware with that. Give it 10 to 15 minutes and I'm sure you will start to love it. And it also has another great soundtrack, so go ahead and listen for 35 seconds and I'll be right back with even more games to show. It just got such a dissonant tone to it. It's almost like a soundscape than a soundtrack, but it works within the context of being this sci-fi experience. And just having a first-person shooter on the DS is a ton of fun, because this was really the bridge between 2D and 3D for Nintendo and handhelds. Obviously the DS could do 3D, but it was a little bit rough. But when developers who knew what they were doing with the hardware and knew what they were doing with game design got together and started putting 3D on the DS, you could end up with games like Moon, which are just absolutely fun to play. It's one of those things, I just wish I heard about this game more often. And you will see here is a side-by-side with the screen up as well. It does work really well on the Steam Deck. This is both screens at once, so you can kind of get the overall story, keep the gameplay to the side, and then when you're done getting that little story bit, just reconfigure your screen to pop that main gameplay portal up into your viewport, and you're good to go. Now moving on to something incredibly strange, and you're either going to love it or hate it, is Flower, Sun, and Rain. This is an almost indecipherable adventure game for the Nintendo DS from grasshopper manufacturer, and if you know them, you either love their games or hate them. There does not seem to be any in between with the games that they develop. People either think they're the best things of all time or they really don't click with them whatsoever, and Flower, Sun, and Rain is going to be the most challenging of their games in my opinion to decide whether you absolutely love or absolutely hate, but it definitely is something that you should give a chance, because if you do love it, it might end up being one of your favorite hidden gems of all time, and if you hate it, well, you can at least say you tried it. But you can see this game has style in spades right off the top, and it only gets weirder and stranger from there. And I don't really want to talk too much about the story, because that really does ruin the overall concept of what the game is. So much of the story is important to this. It almost feels like a bright, sunny Twin Peaks, even though it has nothing to do with that video franchise, and it kind of has some Deadly Premonition vibes as well, without some of the horror in there. Obviously this came after Twin Peaks and before Deadly Premonition, but if you love either of those things, then Flower, Sun, and Rain is definitely one that I think you should play. But it has all of that grasshopper manufacturer weirdness and personality, and I absolutely love everything they do in the weird genre. So for me, this game is absolutely one of those things that I love and can't get enough of. It's such a unique experience. The game is so strange, and honestly the game sometimes doesn't even really feel like a game. It feels like an artistic experience, but really you run around in a quasi-open world trying to find different objects, people, solve rudimentary puzzles, but you're really just here to get a sense of what's going on within the world and to explore and find more things to see and do. That's the great part about this game. Exploration wise, you're just constantly driven forward because you want to know what happens next, and that's always a great experience. It is a challenging game as far as getting into it is concerned though, but the great thing on Steam Deck is if you don't like something, you can just stop playing it and pick something else out of your library. But definitely check Flower, Sun, and Rain out. You're either going to find your new favorite game or your new least favorite game. But speaking about engrossing stories, this is 999. This is the start of an adventure game series in the visual novel genre, and we have 3 games in the series so far, and all 3 of them, in my opinion, are some of the best storytelling that I've ever seen in a video game of this nature. Maybe you love visual novels, maybe you hate them, but if you've never tried one before, definitely try 999, because if you love it, there's 2 more games in this franchise, and they are all based upon each other, expanding the lore and overall canon of this series. And these are the type of games that work really well on the Steam Deck as well. You'll see here in docked, I have both screens up at once. You get the visual that then fades to black, and you get all of the text. So you're able to click around with the trackpad, you're able to see both screens at once, and both of them end up being bigger than what you would see on a Nintendo DS anyway. So it ends up being a perfectly good way to play a game. And that's the type of thing that the Steam Deck does so well. It enhances the games that we know and love, and just makes them better and more enjoyable to play in some aspects. But again, if you've never played a visual novel before, you're going to love this if you like to read and solve puzzles. This is a point-and-click adventure game with so much story in it. But if you do enjoy visual novels, tell me down below what your favorite one is, and if you ever have played this franchise, I'd be curious as well. I feel like most people I talk about have never checked it out before. I bought this game on a whim, on sale, back when it was kind of new, for like $15 used. It just looked kind of interesting, and I really hadn't had anything else in mind to play on the DS, but I was going on a work trip, so I picked this up, decided I'd give it an hour or two, and honestly I think I played the entire 8-hour flight straight. It was going from the East Coast over to Europe. I don't think I ever put the game down or ever took a nap. It just got me that good. And that's the thing, if you like story-rich games, you like games that you can play 15-20 minutes of and come back to, 999 on the DS is 100% going to be great. And it's got a great soundtrack to go along with all the good storytelling, so go ahead and listen for like 25 seconds this time, but don't go anywhere because I still have more games on the DS to show you. Just has an absolutely awesome soundtrack that keeps getting better as the game goes on, but this is adventure gaming perfection. You get to escape some rooms, you get to find some items, you get to solve some puzzles, and you get to do it while getting one of the best stories on the Nintendo DS in my opinion. And don't forget, this game's a trilogy, so if you fall in love with the first game, you got 2 more coming, and you're going to lose about 100 hours of your life. Now I do want to just get into some classic 2D action. This is Mega Man Zero Collection right here. Gives you multiple games on the cartridge, or in this instance, the virtual cartridge for your Steam Deck, and this is perfect pick up and play gaming. You can play a level on your train ride, you can throw your Steam Deck back in your bag, and you can go on throughout your day. But all of these Mega Man games are great, and they look so good upscaled on the Steam Deck screen or via direct capture. This is just classic Mega Man fun. It's that 2D you all know and love from back in the day, and it just works really well on the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck's D-pad might not be Sega Saturn levels of good, but it is a really solid D-pad, and it just works for these type of games. And this is a game where really you don't need to worry about the second screen whatsoever. All of the action is on the first screen, so you never even really have to pivot back and forth. Because I know some people don't really love having to do that, but I've never minded so much, and it's not like we're going to get a better way to play DS games on a handheld device unless you use original hardware, because Steam and Valve are definitely not going to be coming out with a Steam Deck that has 2 screens. Well, that would be a really interesting formula, but tell me down below what your favorite Mega Man game is. I would be curious. There's so many different ones to pick, but for me it would definitely be X2. But if you're looking for a fun action 2D game to play on your Steam Deck, something that's just really good for train rides, bus rides, just kind of hanging out at lunch, Mega Man Zero Collection is 100% going to have you covered. It's going to give you a ton of fun, and you will see here there's so many different games that you can choose. You have 4 games off the top, and those are going to keep you very busy. But if you play one game from this list and one game only, make it Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. Sure, you can play it on the Switch, but the fun part is because it works on Switch, you can play it on your Steam Deck too. Sure that, those are my recommendations, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye!